We're going to be discussing IPM and affordable housing with Susannah Reese from StopPests.org. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest news, products, and politics from today's leading industry pros, offering you their technical marketing and growth strategies to give you, the pest management professional, that killer edge. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I have on the phone today Susannah Reese. She leads StopPest.org in a housing program at Cornell University's Northeastern IPM Center. She coordinates the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and the USDA interagency efforts to provide integrated pest management training and consultation in affordable housing. Susannah holds an MS in Natural Resource Management and has worked in cooperative extension as an educator for over 13 years. She now lives in upstate New York. Hey, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk about what we do.
Yes, it is. It's very exciting. I was reading all about what you guys were doing, and I said, this is so neat that they're investing really a lot of effort and resources and to really educate and train people. Tell people about what Stop Pest is.
Well, I think we came out of a need to address the pest management in affordable housing. HUD recognized that a big chunk of the budgets of public housing authorities were devoted to pest control and pest problems, and they wanted to see if we could not only limit costs of pest control, but look at integrated pest management as an alternative to these monthly spray schedules to promote, healthier and safer environments for not only the residents of housing, but the folks that work in housing, the staff members. So we started in 2007 with a grant, an interagency agreement between HUD and the USDA at the Northeast IPM Center at Cornell University, and we have grown we have 5 consultants now and myself who provide training and resources and consultation to public housing and also Section 8 housing, property-based or project-based Section 8 housing.
Yeah, that's always been from a PMP business owner. Mm-hmm. That has always been not only a huge challenge for me, but also a pretty much a big burden, because I realized that the people who can least afford pest control have the most problems and the most serious problems. Most of my clients, are middle class, upper middle class, wealthy clients, but trying to provide that kind of service in IPM and in that type of environment has proven to be a huge challenge for me, because of trying to convince these property owners and even the residents that this is so much better in the long run, that this is so much more affordable. Talk to us about your experience with your education and your training, of what you come across with that.
Yeah, it is a challenging place to work for PMPs and for property managers and for residents. I think some of the problems we see in affordable housing are across the board in any multifamily housing, where you have people living together. You can't control what your neighbor is doing. So pests, naturally, if one neighbor has a pest problem, those pests are going to find their way into the neighbor's home. So it's a community effort it takes. I always think about it like that. For too long, we just relied on the exterminator, which we don't like to use that word anymore, but to come in and just on a monthly schedule, spray down, and that was it. That was pest control. So HUD has new guidances that promote IPM, integrated pest management, in all of their housing sites and all subsidized housing. And with the recognition that this is a better way to control pests, our goal is to get not only have the pest control person, the PMP, controlling the pests, but have the staff and the residents be part of this team effort. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way integrated pest management is going to work in multifamily housing, is if everybody's on board. So a lot of the challenges in affordable housing are, we see the residents as presenting some problems, but we also see residents providing a lot of the solutions too. So number one challenge is people not reporting pests and not allowing contractors in. And I think it's different in every situation, but the residents really need to feel like they're empowered, that they can do something about the pest problem. They have to recognize the pest problem, and they have to report the pest problem. That's not going to work in every situation, but we really can do a lot more with educating residents. I like a couple of sites I've worked with when I do these trainings. The pest control company, the PMP, comes to the training and talks to residents and shares what they're doing and gives them a little education too. So I really think that's a priority and a good way to go about things, is to have the PMP get more involved with the residents and help them understand, what pests we really are worried about, and what the PMP is doing to control those pests. It runs the gamut. So sometimes I see residents that really want a PMP to come in and spray, and then you have residents who don't want to let the PMP in at all. So they have to understand IPM, first of all, and that's part of our job, is helping the property managers and the staff find resources to help the residents understand if we're using dates and monitoring, it's a little different than the guy coming in and spraying. You might not see those dead bugs instantaneously, but these things take a little while to work. The other challenge we see is if they're used to having somebody come in and spraying regularly, and then the PMP just comes in and checks monitors, you think, oh, well, he didn't do anything. So there's that education piece that is first and foremost in my mind. The residents have to understand what integrated pest management is and what their role is in integrated pest management.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of resources on our website. There's a lot of universities and a lot of great resources that address this. We have a tenant education video that's for free on our Stop Pest website, and there's countless little YouTube videos in Spanish and various languages that help residents understand their role in integrated pest management.
No, I totally agree. It's been my biggest challenge in our pest control business is convincing the customer. This has been my challenge, convincing the customer that the spraying is not the only thing that we do. And most of the time, in an integrated pest management program, it's actually will be counterproductive if we actually did that. And I always use this term, and I work very closely with our extension service down here. And we do a lot. They do a lot of training. They do a ton of training. They're really awesome at it. And what I find that in the age of information, the ignorance about this abounds, even among PMPs. Because when I ask the question, when I do the pesticide training portion over there, I will ask PMPs, what is IPM? And really the only answer I get is, well, to rotate your chemicals, so it's not really clear, even to PMPs, what is integrated pest management. It's mostly, rotating your chemicals is just sound pest management practice, but it's not IPM. And I think that most people really, even the majority of people who are PMPs, which are spray-only companies, they don't understand integrated pest management, and they're in the industry. And that's what's scary to me about this. And can you really take a few minutes and really kind of explain what IPM is? Because there's IPM in if you use it in agriculture, it's different. If you use it in a field grown environment for nurseries, it's different. But in the urban pest management field, what is IPM?
Yeah, Good point. I think we have a big marketing project ahead of us. Integrated pest management, I think, has been around since Nixon, but it's not a term that's like easily understood or accepted by the general public. It seems just like this industry term that's kind of not catching on. I think it's caught on in the school environment because there's some. There was a push to get integrated pest management in schools, and we really need that in housing too. We need that push for people to understand what it is and then to adopt it. But the premise of IPM is pests need food and water and places to hide, and if you take these away, you can solve many pest problems without even applying chemicals. So, first step in integrated pest management is monitoring. If there's no pest present, no chemical needs to be applied. No product needs to be applied. Monitoring is key, and there are monitors for a lot of pests that make things easier. There's sticky traps for cockroaches. There's great new monitors, passive monitors that sit in bed legs for bed bugs. So there are great tools to monitor for pests. The second step is to correctly identify the pest. I always like to tell the story when I misidentified a mouse problem. I thought it was a mouse problem, and it was a rat problem, and I used the wrong type of trap, and then I had a whole big problem with a rat that had a head wound and was walking in circles, and I had to do something about that rat because I misidentified my pest and used the wrong tool. So proper identification, and like you mentioned, our state extension offices are a great resource for getting pests identified, but the PMPs have seen almost everything. They can identify a pest correctly. So that's step number 2 is correct identification. So you're applying the correct chemicals or you're using the correct products. And then scaling your treatment. So you've identified your pest. You know it needs a treatment. Now you have to scale the treatment to the pest problem. We often say one bed bug is not an infestation. So a treatment for one bed bug is going to be very different from a treatment for thousands of bed bugs. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of process. So understanding what the treatment options are is very important, and having a range of treatment options. And when you do decide you're on your treatment option, having more than one tool in your toolbox is really important. We all know that pests are developing resistance to pesticides. So just relying on one chemical and using that over and over is not going to solve the problem in most pests because they've developed resistance to most of the commonly used chemicals. So having a few other tools, even vacuuming, steam, desiccant dust, using a variety of tools together that will address the pest problem on different levels and in different places is the better way to go rather than just relying on one chemical. Right. I looked at a bed bug protocol recently where they were using a natural product that was researched and a good product, but that's all they were doing. And lo and behold, the problem wasn't going away. They were just using an eco-friendly spray. So they needed a few more tools in the toolbox is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And then once you've developed your treatment plan and you've treated, the next step in IPM is monitoring, and evaluating that treatment to see if it worked. That's another really important premise of integrated pest management, keeping a log and understanding, okay, we've treated the bed bugs with this product for 3 months. They're still here. It's time to reevaluate and change up our treatment. Reevaluate and constantly monitoring are really what I'm promoting in affordable housing, but in all integrated pest management venues, it's vital. This is a challenge in affordable housing because there aren't there's limited staff time, and a lot of times I get the response, well, our PMP, our pest control person, is monitoring for us. But we're trying to promote this more as a team effort. So when I do my trainings and when I do my consultation, I talk to the property manager and the maintenance staff about there are other opportunities when you're in somebody's apartment. If you're using monitors, you can check those monitors during housekeeping visits, during a routine maintenance visit. There's other ways to be keeping your eye on pests, and we can't just rely on this pest management person to come in on a monthly or bi-monthly schedule to keep on top of things, there's other ways to monitor for pests. And if you're using monitors, like, for example, the bed bug monitors, it's really intrusive to go in and pull apart somebody's bed to inspect for bed bugs. But if you're using monitors, you just check the monitor. And that also relies on the resident keeping those monitors in place, which can be a challenge. But it helps things go a lot easier if those monitors stay in place. So, so having this team effort is really what we're promoting.
Right. Compared to, in years past in urban pest management, the biggest problem that people had were roaches and rats. I mean, that was the common complaint. But now we're starting to see that bed bugs is becoming a huge problem. And it's kind of like it nobody wants to admit it because it's associated with certain stigmas, and people will not be open and say, "Oh, I have a bed bug," or "I think I have a bed bug," because of what's associated. I mean, it's bad enough when people tell me, "Oh, we don't have roaches," and I'm going, "Yeah, I see the droppings and I see the euthicas there. You have roaches, But with bed bugs, I think it's much worse. Talk to us a little bit about all the bed bugs myths, misinformation that's out there that people really need to know. Because it is, I think it's a huge health issue and a big problem. And let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed is my program, when it started in 2007, was really built around cockroaches and the health impacts of cockroaches and mice and their relation to asthma. And then more and more, we started to deal more and more with bed bugs, obviously. But did the cockroach problems go away? So I ask every PMP that I see and every researcher, are cockroaches just going away because we have better technology, or are bed bugs such a problem and such an expense that they just take precedence? I'm just curious to get answers from folks from different parts of the country, and everybody does have a different answer. A lot of people say that, well, the bait technologies are working better, and as we are moving, hopefully, to more of the bait technologies, the cockroach problems are getting easier to manage. But I've been to some housing authorities where you still walk into an apartment and the cockroaches rain down on your head. So right. I know they're not going away. And I just think that bed bugs, because they present such an expense to housing authorities and to multifamily housing, that they often just take over, and and people really need help with them. So big problems with bed bugs are, like you touched on, are people don't report them, and it could be because of the stigma. A lot of times people don't know that they have bed bugs. This is especially true in housing for elderly and disabled folks. So having those monitors and having caretakers of the residents understand the signs and what to look for really is so important in those situations. Not everybody reacts to bed bug bites. I found that surprising when I found that out. So you could have an infestation and not know until it gets really out of hand. And that's when it becomes more challenging. Once, people get so freaked out about bed bugs, and I try to reassure people, if you're inspecting and you're keeping on top of things, a few bed bugs is going to be a lot easier to manage than a bed bug infestation that gets out of hand and can be very expensive. So, we have the people not responding, and in HUD-subsidized housing, it is the landlord or the property manager's responsibility to take care of the bed bug issues. A lot of folks don't report because they think they're going to have to pay for the treatment, or they're just embarrassed. So a lot of reasons why they go unnoticed for a while and get out of hand. Clutter and hoarding, those are really big issues for bed bugs and for all pests. They don't cause bed bugs, but they often provide harborages and places for the bed bugs to hide and be less susceptible to treatment. I just want to put out there that the Boston Housing Authority has done great research and has some great resources at masshousing.com on hoarding. They did a study that correlated the amount of clutter often corresponds with the number of pest control visits that you receive. So clutter and hoarding, that's one of the myths. Don't cause bed bug infestations, but they can contribute to an infestation getting out of hand. The other big myth that we hear is, well, not myth, but I think it's been dispelled, is that they spread disease. Bed bugs can spread disease. There's a possibility that they can, but there's no proof that they can spread disease right now. So they're not, the CDC, I think, just reclassified bed bugs as not a health problem. I can't think of the classification that they downgraded bed bugs basically because they don't spread disease. They might have the capability, but there's been no cases of disease spread through bed bugs. Because if you think about the lifestyle of a bed bug, they're staying generally on one host for most of their life. They do hitchhike, but they don't travel around. Like a mosquito can go from host to host to host. And those are often the bugs that are more likely to spread disease. The other thing we hear, we hear some really silly things that we have to tell people all the time. They don't fly. They don't burrow into your skin. They don't attach themselves. They really don't bite pets so much because if you think about the shape of bed bug, they're like a little flat apple seed is how I describe them a lot. It's different than a flea. A flea has that long, skinny shape that allows them to go through hair. Bed bugs are just adapted really for humans and to not burrow into our skin and not go through hair. So that's often a concern people have that we have to, calm them down about. A lot of people think that you can't see bed bugs. You can definitely see them. There's a lot of great pictures out there. If you haven't seen a bed bug, Google images of bed bugs and be aware of what they look like. A lot of people mistake them for scabies for some reason. I get that all the time. And lice also are mistaken for bed bugs and ticks. But bed bugs are definitely their own thing. Right. There's a couple different life stages, and they look very different from the time they're a little nymph to an adult. And it's worth it to know what the nymphs look like fed and unfed because there's just a great variation of looks among the different stages of life in bed bugs. You can even see their eggs if you look really carefully. Not everyone can see them because you'd have to use a flashlight probably to see them.
Right.
Rubbing alcohol, that's another one. I wrote down some of my common myths. I'm looking at my list, but rubbing alcohol is a big thing right now that people think that they can just spray rubbing alcohol on their bed and it's low toxic and it kills the bed bugs. Dr. Deanie Miller at Virginia Tech University has a great quote. She said, yeah, you can hit a bed bug with rubbing alcohol and it'll kill it, but so will a hammer. So anything, if you hit the bed bug with something, yeah, it will die, but it doesn't provide long-lasting coverage or control. So rubbing alcohol, yeah, if you directly spray a bed bug, but so will soapy water kill any bug, And rubbing alcohol can be a fire hazard. If you're soaking your bed in rubbing alcohol and then smoking a cigarette, we know that can be very dangerous. So if folks want to take bed bug control into their own hands, I usually don't recommend that, obviously. I think that bed bug issues are challenging and often and almost always require a professional, whether you're going to go with heat treatment or chemical treatment or a combination. It's best left in the hands of professionals. So there we go back to the problem of people have to report if they have bed bugs and report them to their property managers or their landlords. And then the landlord makes the call to the pest management professional. Yeah. The other thing I see happening that really disturbs me are bug bombs and residents using the bug bombs and thinking that they're going to achieve control with foggers or bug bombs. And it's just common sense that those sprays, and people don't understand, I think, how they work, is the bug bombs go off and they spread the pesticide all over the place except where the bed bugs are hiding. So they can cover every surface with a pesticide, but they're not going to reach the bed bugs that are hiding in the mattress and in the walls and in the little cracks and crevices. So the professionals know where the bed bugs are hiding. They're going to apply the chemicals where the bed bugs are hiding and not overexpose people to chemicals. That, in addition to the products that residents or the average person can buy at the hardware store really aren't effective. The bed bugs have become very resistant to the commonly used chemicals, and they're just not going to be as effective as the products that a professional is using. We're seeing that the combination products that have a pyrethroid and a neonicotinoid combination are much more effective than just using, one type of chemical. So the professionals have access to some better products. Ultrasonic devices, they just don't work for anything, and that's a question I get almost every training. Do they work? And people don't like to believe they don't work. So sometimes I say, well, if it makes you feel better, buy it, but it's not going to be effective, and you have to think of other solutions.
No, I have the same issues where people don't understand. Listen, and even in this, even among PMPs, I hate to say, because I'm trying, this whole podcast is dedicated to helping PMPs be better, getting the training that most of the time they only get training once a year when they go to get their CEU trainings, and then they get bombarded with maybe 3 to 6 hours of training where they're not used to being in class all the time, and in adult education that's always an issue. But understanding how these products behave, and that if you use a pyrethroid, that most pyrethroids by nature are repellents. Mm-hmm. And all you're doing is repelling them back into their place for hiding until residues are gone. And I think it's important in IPM, and I always stress this in IPM, that you would never take your car to a mechanic that shows up with a hammer. And that's, you wouldn't do that, and yet it's so readily accepted because of the traditions that we have with products that are no longer available, that would sit around in the environment for 15 years, and they're no longer available. Residuals are not the same. All those things, the combination of problems with resistant to bed bugs, and how people actually, by trying to help, make things worse. Yeah. I always, when I consult with a client, I always ask, what are they using? What do they apply last? Because they'll always take me to their cupboard and show me what they've been putting out. And then I know what I'm dealing with, and I say, okay, this is what they've done. Now I need to know when was it applied, how often, what they did, to try to understand, well, what am I going to be able to do here? So those are challenges that I think you got a very difficult task, because a lot of the urban developments, money is an issue. Budgets. When I compare to what we're paying down here, most companies, most buildings are paying for a monthly pest control spray service. I cringe at the thinking, what can you actually do with that? You're paying 75 cents in this market to $1 per apartment for a baseboard spray in kitchens and bathrooms, and trying to convince management that this is not going to really do anything in the long run, that they're actually spending their money, they're wasting it versus actually spending it wisely. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you face in talking to owners of buildings or management or staff regarding these issues, and even from trying to deal with a pest management company that is in business for profit, and they have to. Everybody's in this business for profit, and you're in the education, and you're trying to get this thing to work together, and I think that's a huge challenge. Talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, this is a huge challenge, and often the people coming to me, the property managers that come to me, already know, okay, well, we got to change something. I've heard about this integrated pest management. We're supposed to be using it in housing. Let me find out more about it, because it's already on their minds.
Okay.
The challenge is the people that have never heard of IPM and don't think that, pest management really has anything to do with them because they have contracted out that pest management piece. We're trying to reach out to property managers and go through HUD to talk to property managers and help spread the word about there is an alternative to these monthly spray schedules, and there are tools and resources that pests have that can help you design contracts and educate your procurement specialists on the language even just the language that they need to know. The procurement specialists, the property managers, they need to speak the language of integrated pest management, first of all, to understand what they need to ask for. So they need to be more proactive and understand what they want to ask for. I do run into this. Well, it's going to be much more expensive to implement an IPM program. There's a real need out there for some research, and there's a couple of projects in the making, hopefully get funded, to look at that specific issue. Can we save money by implementing an IPM program, a successful IPM program in affordable housing? So hopefully we have some research that's going to back this up, because right now we have some anecdotal research that says, yeah, you spend more money up front because you're sealing up the cracks and crevices and limiting where the pests are getting in, and you may have to invest in some structural improvements to keep the pests out. And you're also, if you're promoting IPM and reporting pests among your residents, you're going to see a peak in residents reporting pests, hopefully, and that's going to require more visits from your PMP. But I think there are ways that we can limit costs, too. When I think about it, a PMP going in to an apartment and applying a spray, I think that takes a lot longer than a PMP going into an apartment and, noting the pest-conducive conditions, but just checking the monitors. So it's a mindset. I think that we can get around this mindset that, it's going to be more expensive, but we need people to try it, and we need people to do it. That's the challenge. And it's often, if you've never heard of integrated pest management, then you don't know of that there is an alternative to this contract that you've used for decades. So Pests has tried to provide examples of contracts to help procurement people to design contracts that have integrated pest management principles written into them. And we hope that just by educating folks in housing about integrated pest management, that it becomes more widely accepted and widely known. I think the school IPM program, again, is a really good example of how it was promoted and then accepted in many, many states, because we saw the challenges of exposing our kids to pesticides in schools, so they shifted in schools to integrated pest management and have been successful. I think in housing, it's got to follow that example, and hopefully we're going to see that happening as it becomes promoted, at least with subsidized housing with HUD, and becomes more of a priority. There's other resources on the Stop Pests website to help property managers and procurement specialists find contracts and find companies that will use IPM, and to know what to ask for and to know what to look for is really important. So by entering into a consultation and training agreement with Stop Pests, we can help, work through some of those issues. No,
that's excellent. So we're looking at three major things. We're looking at, to reiterate this, the cooperation, obviously the management being aware that there is a problem, that they're not blind to it, that they are aware, then making the residents and educating and working with them in cooperation, and then they're reporting it back to the PMP so that they know what they're experiencing. So it has to work together in with the PMP and not rely that you have a contract and that, we have an agreement and they're supposed to be eliminating our pests.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the major challenge, which is the same thing, I've experienced in the field with working with. Do you see the problem with IPM, because you deal mostly in HUD, but like in a lot of more like adult care facilities, and because they're becoming really popular, a residential home for elderly. Are they more open, or you find challenges there too?
It just is different. Every situation is very different. And like I said before, it's often the property managers who take the first step because they have either just thrown their hands up with pest infestations that won't come under control, or they've heard about this integrated pest management, or they've looked at the HUD notice and said, okay, well, this sounds like something that's safer and healthier for my residents and for my staff. I want to go in this direction. So it's the folks that haven't heard of IPM and that the challenge exists in. So we really have like I said earlier, a marketing campaign ahead of us to really spread the word about integrated pest management as an alternative to these monthly chemical sprays that we see. I think it's clear that integrated pest management doesn't say don't use chemicals at all.
Right.
But you're saying use them in situations where they're called for. Don't use them if there's no pests. And use the most effective chemicals, or use baits instead of sprays, if at all possible.
Yeah, I definitely think an education is from speaking just from the PMP perspective of investing more. And this is, I know it's tough because I run a business. I understand. I talk to people who are city employees and city managers who say, even if the training was free, we couldn't send our people because we can't give them time off to train. Right. We're short-staffed. We're under budget. That's a huge challenge that you have on your hands.
Right.
Working with organizations like the National Pest Management Association, and trying to educate the public. I mean, you're obviously looking at a major undertaking of educating the public, not the PMPs have the information available to them whenever they want it. They know it's there. Most of them know it's there. The question is, getting them to work together and getting the what are the public campaigns or anything going on as far as a as far as a what do you call it, stuff that PBS does, public awareness campaigns.
Yeah.
What's going on with that in the media?
That. My director at the Northeastern Integrated Pest Management Center at Cornell is just starting to work on that and do a little video campaign about what is IPM to you, but addressing where it is, what it is across agriculture and schools and in housing. So that is definitely a recognized need that we'll be hopefully focusing on. I think also it has to come down, also, like HUD says, you need to practice IPM, and then there has to be some repercussions for not practicing IPM. Right. So there has to be some sort of government involvement, often for things to really get pushed forward. I hate to say that, but sometimes the public needs a little push in that direction.
Right.
That's a big challenge, I think, that we really have to, maybe it's the name. Integrated Pest Management is a mouthful.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a catchier phrase that we can all adopt.
Yeah, it's a challenge because even with terms that get thrown around today, where natural, organic, where people are like, trying to do a lot of things. I was just having a conversation. This is a very wealthy man who owns a property that, it's in a very nice neighborhood. And he says, I want you to come in and I want you to spray, because he's just doing a lot of remodeling and they have a lot of American cockroaches, and come in and spray. And I said, and he has pets, and his major concern was, well, what about my little dogs? Obviously he doesn't have little children. So he was talking about his little pets. And I said, look, here is the reality of what you're trying to accomplish. And I had to sit there and educate. The good thing is, they're educated people and they'll listen. But still, it was this notion that, no, I'm not going to spray your house because I don't spray the house. That's not what we do. This is how we do it. These are your problems. They're coming in through your sewers. You have all these open areas. We have to seal all that off. Then we put baits, and then we wait and we monitor. And when I started getting into this immediately, we're not going to spray, this look in his eyes glazing over, because it's that mentality that if you're not spraying, you're not doing a good job. I says, look, I'll guarantee it. I'll give you a written guarantee that I'll solve your pest problem. And still, there's that huge, almost resistance internally to, this is what I've always seen. You know, you're coming to me with something. You know, it's like trying to explain penicillin for the first time. That's how I feel about it. When I'm trying to explain in the most simplest terms IPM to people and what we do and how we do it. It's really, I feel like we're trying to explain, penicillin is you're going to put bacteria here and it's going to clear your cold up here.
Yeah. I think these ideas, just take a long time to catch on.
Yeah.
Although we've had integrated pest management, promoted since 1970s.
Right.
The angle that I try to take is the personal safety and health, and saving money. For property managers, they want to know how we're going to save money. So that's something that needs a little more research done. So I can say, if you transition to integrated pest management, you can save this amount of dollars per year.
Right.
So that's a real gap in research out there that I hope that some newer projects are going to fill that gap. But the personal safety thing is the pet safety thing. It surprises me sometimes that people don't make the connection, like the bug bombs. My babysitter did one of those bug bombs for flea control, and I said to her, "Don't you know what I do for a living? Please come to me and ask me for advice next time you have a pest problem." But I think she's a great person. I think she's smart, but she didn't make the connection that she's got babies crawling around on the carpet, and she just blasted her whole home with a pesticide. So I think the first angle that I try to take is the personal safety, and then when I work with property managers, I try to talk about more like how we can save money. But bed bugs, again, going back to bed bugs, the non-chemical controls for bed bugs and the non-chemical preventatives are time and money. The mattress encasements. Right. I wish that every public housing authority could put mattress encasements on every box spring and every mattress. Again, whether they stay on and get left on by the residents is anyone's guess. But that's often cost prohibitive. I have worked with some housing authorities that have had such bad bed bug problems that they've shuffled around their budget and they've made that work. Right. The monitors that I talked about, the interceptor monitors that sit underneath the bed legs, they're about $4 a piece. If you buy them in bulk, you can get them through your pest control company that you're contracted with, usually for a good price. $4, each bed leg, $16 at least if there's one bed in the unit. That's expensive. That adds up, but it's certainly less expensive than the thousands of dollars on treatments that you'd incur with a very bad bed bug infestation. So just getting over some of the initial costs of monitoring and exclusion and the other things that you can do, the mechanical things that you can do to prevent pest infestations, that's a big hurdle. There has to be some creative ways to move around budgets. One of the things I like seeing is, two real positive things that help integrated pest management is the crossover between weatherization and excluding pests. I think this comes in more with, it can work with cockroaches and bed bugs, but in general, like mice and rats. If we're doing the sealing up of cracks and crevices and entryways for weatherization purposes, we are often, having that serves a dual purpose by keeping some of those pests out. So there's often money out there for weatherization projects, grant money. So I try to promote, thinking about things in those terms. The other way that I'm seeing some interesting ways to put money towards integrated pest management are some health interventions, some asthma intervention programs are now looking at the causes of asthma. And I think I read that I think it's cockroaches are the number one cause of asthma in urban youth right now because of their droppings and their shed skin. So tying those integrated pest management for cockroaches and mice to asthma interventions, you can often find money through healthcare grants to do some interventions. New York City Housing Authority has done this quite successfully. But often those are bigger housing authorities can afford those types of grants, and it's the smaller housing authorities and smaller, Section 8 properties that don't have those resources. So they're on their own. So staff training is just vital for those smaller housing authorities and multifamily properties. And they say, I get so many times, our staff doesn't have time. But getting over that and saying, okay, you put the time in now, it's less time in the future. Do these weatherization and these pest exclusion things now, and you're going to have less problems down the line. And a lot of the problems we see also are with these aging structures. There's just a lot of ways for pests to get in, and there's a new group called SCOPE, the Scientific Coalition on Pest Exclusion. They have a website. They're looking at all the different ways that you, and they're prioritizing pest exclusion, basically looking at the things that you can do in an older building or in new buildings, even in new construction, that will double as pest exclusion and weatherization. And but they're looking at the science behind keeping pests out of buildings. So hopefully we'll see some good work come from that group, and their hope is to create like a checklist for multifamily housing properties to go through and look at their property and figure out where the priorities are and where the pests are getting in. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, no, I am, every day that we go out there and we're trying to, obviously we're trying to make a difference. Some of the things that I see, the correlations that I make in the environment that we're in, is almost the same correlation regarding the obesity and diet, because of the cheaper alternatives that are available. People will look at their budgets and say, it's cheaper to eat this way, even though in the long run, I'm going to end up paying, I'll eat this way and save money 80 years of my life, but the last 20 years of my life, I'll spend giving it all away to doctors to deal with the problem. And I think it's the same issue in pest management that we have in a lot of these neighborhoods where people are just poor and they can't afford, when you look at buying a pound of broccoli versus buying a burger, which is $1, you're like, wow, financially it's a no-brainer. But they don't, the cost later on that are associated with, like I said, with the asthma issue, with, with all the illnesses that are becoming more and more, I think it's a huge undertaking. But to try, but hey, I'm encouraged that we are trying to make a difference, that we are trying to educate people and get them informed and get some of them to change what they're doing. I would like for you to send me all those links of all the things we discussed, because I would love to put them in the show notes and make those available to people so that they can contact and look up that information. We got a couple of minutes here. Anything that you would like to end with, if people want to get a hold of you and a hold of what you guys are doing and get you involved in their projects, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks. In particular, I know your audience is pest control professionals, and if we even get referrals from, as I network with people, we get referrals from pest control companies that are having a particularly challenging time in public housing. That they say that we're doing our best, but this property manager, contact this property manager. So I get referrals from pest control companies all the time from buildings that they're working with that are in particular need of our help. So, for your audience, if you do work with public housing or Section 8 housing, and even in all affordable housing or all housing, our website has great resources for anyone working in any type of multifamily housing. And our website is stoppest.org. Right on our homepage, you can hit a link that says request training, and you can get in touch with us that way. I check that every day. And you can email stoppests@cornell.edu. That's STOPPESS PEST, at cornell.edu. You can call our office, which is 607-254-8990. And I encourage everyone who is interested in integrated pest management and housing to visit our website. It's just stoppest.org. We have a blog. We have a Facebook page, Stop Pests in Housing. And we also tweet at Stop Pests.
That is awesome. Also, do you guys, are working with, you mainly do work in New York, or do you have other affiliates throughout the country?
Good point. We work all over the country. I have trainers and consultants that work for Stop Pests in every region of the country. We've done work from, Hawaii to Maine. So anywhere in the country, we have a consultant that can help. Excellent.
No, I really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. And it's been awesome. It's been an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I really hope that even if we get this podcast out, that it'll get retweeted, that people will just, Facebook and Twitter and all these social medias, I think, is going to be part of our key to get that word out effectively to people in a very low cost way, since we're always trying to...
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So I
would love to get more housing providers involved. So any way I can get the word out, I really appreciate it.
No problem. Hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us this time today. And I know you're busy and sharing with us. And I really do appreciate it. And I hope people do appreciate it also.
No problem. I love to talk about what I do.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Frank. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, if you're like me, you love to listen to audio. And I love to listen to audiobooks. I've been listening to audiobooks since I had a cassette tape in my car. And now I listen to audiobooks on my iPhone with Audible. Audible has more than 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can start your free book trial today for 30 days by going to audibletrial.com/pestgeek to get your free first listen. For more information about the Pest Geek Podcast, visit our webpage at pestgeekpodcast.com. You can get now our news feed from over 30 industry sources in one place on Twitter at Pest Geek Podcast on Twitter. And now also you can go to our community page on Facebook at Pest Geek Podcast. You can like, share stuff, and comment what other PMPs are doing around the country. If you have questions or comments about the Pest Geek Podcast, you can call our question line at 707-397-7378. Our question and comment line is open 24/7, and you can leave a question or comment, including your name, your company name, and we can even use your question or comment on the air as part of the Pest Geek Podcast. If you're shy, you can always email us at franklin@pestgeekpodcast.com with your question and answer, and I will personally respond to you. Thank you for listening. Until next time, folks, have a great one. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.